Good morning. Happy Saturday. Figured since I don't have any classes planned for a couple of days or a week or so, I would do a morning live video, especially since it's a rainy Saturday. I got my inspiration from a drive we took the other day, and you can follow along or watch later and go slow at your own pace because there will be some drawing time. So I was inspired by a nice fall drive, and the materials are a pencil, kneaded eraser if you need it, which is, everything's a mess. A round brush, so if you're going to paint 5x7, you probably want like a size 4. This, I'm going a little larger for the sake of the video. So this is an 8, and then a nice flat snap brush, something to scrape with, jug of water, spritzer bottle, variety of colors, but just remember what colors you're using. So I'm going to be using the lemon yellow, the yellow ochre, I'm going to be using the sap green, ultramarine blue. This looks like a vermilion. And then later on I'll probably pop in some burnt sienna to make a brown, or just mix my colors up. So here we go. So I thought about this perspective of when you're looking up at the trees. One of the first watercolor artists I was really inspired by was Julia Powell, and she did a lot of birches and watercolors as well as acrylics, and the perspective was always looking up from the ground where the trees kind of connect at the top and little bits of blue shine through. I just like the idea of walking through the forest looking up, or as a kid when you would lay in the ground and look up. So these are a couple of test pieces, and there's some scraping, and I can still go in and finish it. So I'm just going to start with making my trees and making them wide, and then they go and they narrow as they get towards what's going to be my canopy of trees. So in some of my painting, my practice pieces, I lost my little side trees. So if you do that, just try to make a little thicker. Mine got a little too thin, and they moved around with the watercolor shift. So this is a great exercise for practicing paints, watercolor paints, because you are doing two things. You're doing negative painting. So we're going to paint around the birch to have the white of the trees pushed through. And it also is really good to practice like how opposing colors react to each other, and how to control them and when to layer them. And then you get to see how they behave. So keeping in mind that whatever you paint is going to be completely different than what I paint. So, if I was in a hurry, it kind of combined like this. And then when I was a little more patient and let it flow, it had more separation. Sorry if it's a little dark. Not the nicest day out today. All right, so here we go. Get started. First thing I'm going to do is make sure that I've got all my color spritz that I want to use. And I'm going to get my colors, a little bit of a puddle of each, kind of on the milky consistency, especially my yellows, because yellows tend to disappear. Get a scrap paper to show you. Some nice thickness. It's got a little green in it, no harm. Nice. See how that's got a lot of liquid in it? That means if I add it to this, it's going to push it away. So I have to make sure when I'm working with my oranges that it has some thickness, or I have to wait for my yellow to dry. or else all that liquid in my orange is going to push it away. Orange is really flat, so if you use it full strength, it just kind of gets dull. So like I said, it's a good practice to learn how each color is going to behave. And I'm going to start by gently giving a little bit of wetness between. So I have my brush is tinted yellow. This will help you see where I'm adding my water, but you just basically have to add water in between your trees. Let that, because that's going to be our background. So if there's a little tint of yellow, no harm. I'm doing it for your sake. And then my canopy, I'm just going to give a quick couple of spritzes because I want to have some areas that are hard edges. So as I look at it under the light, I want to see where the dry areas are. And I'm going to pick up my ultramarine blue and I'm going to drop it in. So you see where it's dry, it just kind of sits there, and where it hits water, it bleeds into it and it moves around. So I just want to add a little bit of blue where my sky is going to poke through. Oops, and I hit it on the tree. See this, why negative painting can be a little tricky. You have a tendency to paint the wrong things if you're not comfortable with it, and it takes a little practice because, like I said, it can get easy. It's easy to lose track of what you're saving and what you're painting. So it's my blue shining through. Right here where there's a hard edge, I'm just going to soften. And then I'm going to let it rest a moment. I'm going to get a sip of my coffee, let the color soak in. Make sure you have a small piece of paper towel if you have to pick up some color or some water the next couple of steps, because that will help you control so you don't have that overbleed of colors. And pick up my yellow, and really you can't put too much yellow down. I'm just going to put a ton of it down because this is the yellow of the foliage as well as the light coming through. And yellow does have a tendency to disappear. From time to time, you're going to see me going just a little bit over some of the white of the birch, and that's because leaves and foliage don't just stand on the side of each tree. Sometimes they layer in front of it. So I can have a foliage going in front there, foliage going in front here, especially towards the tops, not really at the bottom so much. Doesn't hurt to put a couple in here. And see, because it's nice and thick, it's not pushing the blue away. All right, see my brush? I'm just gonna pick up some green. I'm gonna make sure that this is a nice strong sap green. I don't wanna lose it. So you look back to my sample, my orange is still creeping. My green has to have some heaviness to it. And I'm just gonna put a few dots of green. I can layer up colors, just really hard to take it away. So just gonna layer up a few. See how easy it is to I almost stuck my brush into the wrong color green. And that's what I don't like about having a set of pans. Or if you do, you could take them out, just because it's so easy when you're just dabbing around to pick up the wrong color. Oh, clean my brush. It's looking good. I'm pretty happy. I'm going to put in a little bit of yellow ochre on top of some of those yellows just to warm it up. I still want my yellow to pop through. Kind of going to let it touch some of that green. Give it more of a natural foliage color. But I just gotta be careful where my yellow ochre touches the blue of the sky, because it can start, this is a stage where it can start getting a little muddy, especially when you're using ochre. It has, it's an opaque watercolor, so it's got a lot of heaviness and body to it. So when it hits other colors, it can easily make mud. Just a little bit. It's probably also one of the most used colors in watercolor. All right, so we're gonna start moving into oranges, and this is where it gets a little tricky. I'm gonna put a little bit down here first. So this is going to be the bottom part of the forest when you're looking up, and it's going to be very blurry. There's not going to be any defined information in this area. It's just going to be a blend of colors. So I'm just going to go back to my yellow and put a lot of yellow down. Nice and thick. Pick up a little bit of that yellow ochre. Don't cover all of your lemon yellow. It's gonna help it get and stay nice and glow. Glow, glow, glow. Because that's what it's all about. It's that autumn glow. I didn't think that we were having really nice foliage. Like I said, went for a drive the other day out like Rochester, Lakeville, that area, and wow, the colors were spectacular. And I don't use that color. A little bit of green, not much, but just enough. Just stuff stays green down the ground still. And because we're going to do some carving into this, we need our colors to be nice and thick. We don't want to go back. This is a 1-layer painting. This is not a 2-layer painting. So we want our colors to be strong, knowing that watercolor dries darker. We need to have some body in this. I'm going to pick up some of that orange. I'm just going to blend it with a little yellow ochre, so just so it doesn't fly all over the place on me. Kind of a muted orange at this point. You can use a little red. I don't use a ton of red. See how thick it is? It just kind of wants to sit there. Establish some base. Now I'm going to add a little bit of leaves, and I don't want to overwhelm my sky with orange. I can add it later, but it can really have a tendency to fly all over the place. So I'm just going to pop in a couple little orange spots. It's vermilion, which is kind of like a yellow orange. It's kind of staying on that yellow, on the yellow orange side versus like the red purple orange. Kind of stick them together. Oh, the sun came up. And see how I just put a few dots where it's on top of the green? You don't really want to push it there. You just want to kind of let it sit on top, because if you push it too much, you're going to get a very muddy color, because orange and green are opposite colors. I'll let that. I'm pretty happy with that. You know, less is more. And if you want really just a little splattering, just pick up some nice thick orange and just give a quick splatter in your sky, and you will get a really nice random. Look at that. Thank you. All right, so I got some space. I'm going to just darken this up just a little bit. So now I'm going to pick up that burnt sienna, and I'm going to mix it with the yellow ochre just a little bit, because I'm trying not to go too dark too fast. Start getting some darks in here where it kind of meets. Still got a lot of white. Look at me saving the white. I never do that. And see how that orange is, so it's moving, like it just wants to move. Just a couple of little spots just to give some shadows in between the trees. And if you want, you can even move towards a purple as well. The purple will give you some dark, especially down at the bottom, where it mixed with that sienna. I'll give you a nice dark down here. Very heavy there. So I haven't had to bust out the paper towel yet. So, but in my test pieces I did. So if you find that you have an area that's pooling up water, just at this point, take a few minutes and just go in and dab it off. Especially if you want to layer up. Say I wanted to layer a color on top of this orange because it keeps moving. I can pull a little bit of moisture out of there. It dries up that area. I can put either a darker or another color on top of that and just let it sit. There. You just want to kind of do a little moving around with your brush. You don't want to push on this. See what happens when you leave it alone? It starts creating its own organic patterns. All right, so that looks great. I'm pretty happy with that. And this is the part where the painting doesn't really look like anything, so you have to kind of start trusting that you are making good decisions along the way and you're ready to add some effects to it before you finish it up. Or you can leave it alone to rest, which is the preferred thing to do. So I'm pretty happy down here. I'm going to add just a little bit of spritz just to break up some of this color so it's not so flat, especially right here. And that gives it a little, you can barely see it, so it gives a little white break up the color. Paper towel if it's too heavy. Nice splatter there. I'm literally just dropping water on it and it's giving a nice texture of light coming through so it's not so flat down at the bottom. Now I'm going to test to see if it's ready to be scraped. What I want to do here in scraping is all about timing. So if you scrape too early, your color will run back into itself. If you scrape too late, nothing will happen. You could also scrape and get a dark mark, or just wait literally 30 seconds and you'll get those nice white marks. And I'm looking for my scraping tool, which is just a cut up old card. And I want to add, it's like right here, this blue is dry, so nothing's going to happen there. I'm going to start adding some white limbs. If I use a little side angle and scrape, once I pick up the color, I got to clean it off. And kind of go across. Just a few going into the sky. And see how lovely that is. It brings a lot of light into it. Right here, kind of a hard edge, and I clean that up. So this is like the babysitting part. Kind of just watching what's happening and adjusting. Now, when you do scrape, remember it's permanent, so be confident in those marks. Having a shaky hand is actually nice with scraping. It looks really authentic. And just remember, the closer you get to the body, your limbs should be thicker at the bottom. Branches should be thicker in the bottom and thinner as they go on top. Really simple. Now I want to start shaping my birches. Ideally, you should let it completely dry at this point, but for the sake of making the video, I'll just show you a couple of ways to create some really nice textured marks and keeping your tree looking like popping, keeping the white, but also giving it some shape instead of just these white spaces or sticks that are coming out of the ground. So sipping of coffee in between kind of helps do that. So now I'm going to move to my flat brush. A springy flat brush. Usually flat brushes have a little bit more bounce back and it helps you create some really cool shapes. I want to work on what's called a dry brush. So that means that just a little bit of water in my brush, and I'm going to pick up some thick paint And you can use a black, but black is very very flat, so you might want to use a couple of different colors. And you don't want it to have, you want it to kind of have that skip like that. So you might have to take some of the moisture out before you trust it. And always having a scrap of paper nearby helps you know if you've bitched it. I like to use the colors that I used in my foliage to paint my trees versus the black. I just have to make those colors strong enough so that they sit on top and don't look faded. You want your trees to really pop out here. But I have it, when you use nice strong colors, it kind of ties your trees into the whole thing. The whole painting will be connected. So I'm just going to start with blue. I know it's crazy, right? So that's all right though. I'm going to make a few marks of blue. I'll show you how I do this with two colors. So you can mix your two colors on a palette, but then you get a different color. But I enjoy picking up two different colors and just letting them blend on the paper. So I did the ultramarine blue that was in my sky, and then that raw sienna that was down here, and I'm just layering it a little bit on top. And where I let it touch, it creates a nice gray, and it gives my tree a little bit more of a painterly look versus a cutout or just a drawing that's set on top. So these trees are very flat, and I have to be careful. So that's why I said it has to be dry. So because the background painting's not dry, if I touch the side, it's going to bleed out into it. So ideally you would have this part black, this part drying off on you. And then you can come in and start doing your shapes. So just little like half circles. And don't be afraid to change how you hold your brush. See how I move it back and forth? And I dab it. And then I give it some of that nice texture. Get some more blue in here, especially since this is really dark here. I don't want to keep that same color. I want to move more towards the blue side right here. And I'm working pretty dry. I haven't loaded my brush up with any more water yet. Pretty soon I'm going to have to, because I can feel it's getting a little too dry for the, so if I have to wet my brush, I take the water out. Take the moisture out. Because I want this to stay dry brushed, and I don't want it to automatically bleed into the background. So I couldn't find the go live option, so I'm hoping that this just uploads easy. And if you see it starting to bleed into the background, pull off a little water, because you'll come back 10 minutes later and you will have some really heavy bleed. So patience is helpful. You'll have a very heavy bleed if you let it keep going. Starting to do it there. I don't mind as a test painting, but for the sake of trying this out as an exercise. All right. So, simple, keep it simple. You don't have to go insane. I think, sometimes I have a tendency to put too much color down because I have such a problem with white. If that's the situation, I could just tint it a little blue if it's bothering me. Just a little bit of tint right there if I want to tint it, especially down the bottom. Give a little soft, light wash. Oh, I missed a whole tree. Look at that. See how easy that is? In my spec paintings, I actually covered a couple of these faraway trees. All right. Again, so now, again, you would probably wait and let it dry. So if you want to add some dark limbs that come off, if I put it in right now, it's gonna bleed, but for the sake of this lesson, I'll give you a demo. I'll show it on my scrap paper. So you can see where I started. I have the light scraped in, and then over here I put in some dark limbs. And at this point you want to make the dark by staying with the same colors, and I'm mixing that ultramarine blue with that burnt sienna, and I'm mixing them right together, and I'm getting what I hope is a nice dark color, and I just keep going till I get a dark color. See, that's more on the brown side, so I just add some more blue. All right, now I got almost like a gray. It's really nice. I can even add a little purple if I really want to darken it up, still using the same colors that I used in my canopy. I'll make sure there's not any moisture. It's not going to work, so just example here is, if I want to kind of, now I'm just using the tip of my brush to create some larger, darker limbs, and I just gotta be careful where I place it because it might bleed. It's actually not bleeding there, which means it's starting to dry, which is good. Depending on how much water you used in your sky, what your house is like, if it's humid, and also the quality of the paper. And this is good paper, so I was surprised that it dried pretty quickly. And just add some darks. Remember, start thick, work thin. Use just the tip of your brush to make those fine lines. And stop when you're happy. So I hope you enjoyed this little mini lesson here on Facebook today. I am trying to add to my YouTube channel and grow there. I hope you can come join me. Not too bad. I'm pretty happy with that. I could add a little splatter if I want of dark. Always got a splatter. I'm just going to leave it alone, see what it looks like when it's dry. Actually, I always take a few seconds, clean my brushes before I make any decisions. Just do a quick throw away and see what it looks like. But thank you for watching my demo. Autumn glow. Hey, I kind of like it. From a hiker's perspective. Not too bad for 28 minutes. Let's see what you can do. I'd love to see your work. Put it in the comments.